First contact. The crystalline spires of the Nix mothership cast prismatic shadows across Europa's icy surface. Commander Elena Santos watched through the reinforced viewport of Research Station Galileo as the alien vessel descended, its surface refracting Jupiter's distant light into 1,000 dancing colors. 3 months had passed since humanity first detected the approaching ship, and now first contact was imminent. Energy readings are off the charts. Dr. Marcus Wong reported from his station, his voice tight with tension. Their hull seems to be absorbing and storing ambient radiation from Jupiter. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Elena nodded, her dark eyes never leaving the approaching vessel. 20 years of space exploration hadn't prepared her for this moment. Humanity had spread throughout the solar system, establishing bases on Mars, mining operations in the asteroid belt, and research stations like Galileo, but they had never encountered intelligent alien life. Until now. All stations, report status, she commanded, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Communications standing by. Defense systems online. Medical bay ready. Environmental systems nominal. The responses came in quick succession, each member of her 40-person crew performing their duties with practiced precision. They had drilled for this scenario countless times, though everyone knew that no amount of preparation could truly ready them for humanity's first encounter with an alien civilization. The Nix ship, nearly 2 kilometers in length, came to rest 3 kilometers from the station. Its crystalline surface had an almost organic quality, as if the entire vessel had been grown rather than constructed. Periodic pulses of energy rippled through its structure, creating waves of iridescent light that seemed to flow like water. "We're receiving a transmission," announced Communications Officer Zhang. "It's different from anything in our protocols." The signal itself seems to be modulating the energy state of local space. Elena straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The main viewport suddenly flickered, transforming into what appeared to be a window into another world. The beings they saw defied easy description. Their bodies were semi-transparent crystalline structures that shifted and flowed like liquid glass, internal lights pulsing in complex patterns. "I am Nexus Path 79. Came a voice that seemed to emanate from the air itself, translated by their computers into something approximating human speech. "We are the Nex. We have come to evaluate your species." Elena felt a chill run down her spine at those words. There was something in that tone. Something cold and calculating that set off every warning bell in her mind. But she was a diplomat as much as a commander, and humanity's first impression could well determine their species' fate. "I am Commander Elena Santos of the Earth Space Agency. On behalf of humanity, we welcome you to our solar system." The crystalline being's form shifted, its lights pulsing more rapidly. "Your welcome is noted. We have observed your energy usage patterns. Inefficient, wasteful. You leak power into space like wounded prey." Dr. Wong's instruments began beeping urgently. "Commander, they're doing something." The energy absorption rate from their hull just increased exponentially. Elena felt the first stirrings of real fear. "Nexus Path 79. Please explain your intentions. We wish to establish peaceful." "Peace is inefficient," the alien interrupted. "The universe trends toward entropy. Energy must be preserved, harvested, controlled. Your species squanders what we could use. This cannot continue." The station's lights flickered, and Elena watched in horror as streams of energy began flowing from their power systems toward the Nix vessel. Their shields, their heat, their very life support, all of it was being drawn away like water down a drain. "All hands, emergency protocols." Elena shouted, slamming her hand down on the station-wide alarm. "Activate the nuclear backup and prepare for immediate evacuation." But it was already too late for some sections of the station. Where the energy drain was strongest, she could see frost forming on the internal walls. Several crew members collapsed as their heated suits failed, their bodies rapidly losing warmth in the increasingly hostile environment. Dr. Wong worked frantically at his console, his breath visible in the rapidly cooling air. They're not just draining our power, they're absorbing all forms of energy. Heat, kinetic, even potential energy stored in our chemical batteries. It's like they're feeding on it. Elena made a split-second decision. Initialize core overload sequence. Commander, Wong looked up, shocked. That would give them more energy than they can handle. Elena finished grimly, entering her command codes. Sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. The Nyx leader's image flickered back to life on their viewport. Your resistance is noted but futile. You will be harvested, as all inefficient species must be. This is the way off. The alien speech cut off as Europa's surface lit up with the light of a miniature sun. The Lena had triggered not just their station's core, but also the emergency fusion devices they had installed as a backup power source. The resulting explosion sent a massive surge of energy straight into the Nyx vessel's absorption field. The crystalline ship's surface began to crack, unable to contain or redirect such a massive influx of power. Fissures of bright light spread across its hull like lightning bolts frozen in glass. The few surviving sensors recorded energy readings that went off every possible scale before failing completely. When the light faded, the Nyx ship was gone. Either destroyed or fled. They couldn't be sure. But they had learned two crucial things. The aliens could be hurt, and humanity would not be such easy prey as they had assumed. Of the 40 crew members of Research Station Galileo, only 23 survived that first encounter. As Elena helped coordinate the evacuation of the damaged station, she knew that this was only the beginning. The Nyx would return, better prepared and in greater numbers, but humanity would be ready too. She typed out her first report to Earth Command with fingers still numb from the cold. First contact established with hostile species designated Nyx. Threat level, maximum. Primary capability, energy absorption and redistribution. Critical weakness identified. Limited absorption capacity. Recommend immediate development of energy-based weapons and defenses. They think we're inefficient. Let's show them just how much energy humanity can waste when we put our minds to it. As her message streaked toward Earth at light speed, Elena looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Nyx were undoubtedly preparing for war. But they had made a crucial mistake. They had shown humanity their hand too soon, and in doing so, had given Earth's most resourceful species time to prepare. The battle for survival had begun, and humanity's greatest advantage was that their enemies had severely underestimated them. It wouldn't be the first time an apex predator had made that mistake, Elena thought, nor would it be the last. The Silent War. 6 months after the Europa incident, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her underground laboratory beneath the Atacama Desert, studying the fragment of crystalline material recovered from the battlefield. The piece, no larger than her palm, still pulsed with a faint inner light, despite being separated from its host ship. Around her, specialized equipment hummed at the lowest possible power settings, a necessary precaution when studying something that could drain energy like water through a sieve. Running test sequence 17. She spoke into her recorder, her voice barely above a whisper. Even sound energy, they had learned, could be absorbed by Nyx technology. Applying controlled quantum field at 1% capacity. The crystal fragment flickered as the quantum field engaged, its internal structure shifting like liquid glass. On her screens, data scrolled past in endless streams, information that might mean the difference between humanity's survival and extinction. A soft chime from her computer indicated an incoming priority transmission. Commander Santos's face appeared on the screen, looking more haggard than when Sarah had last seen her. The survivors of Europa had been working non-stop since first contact. Dr. Chen, Elena's voice crackled through the secure channel. We've lost contact with the Titan mining colony. Total energy signature disappearance, just like Mars Base 3 last month. Sarah's hands tightened on her desk. 3 billion humans had died on Mars when the Nyx fleet arrived, their bodies flash-frozen as every joule of energy was stripped from their environment. The silent war had already claimed more lives than any conflict in human history. "I might have something," Sarah replied, pulling up her latest test results. The crystal fragment responds differently to various types of energy. It's not just absorption, it's more like digestion. They process energy through their crystalline matrix, breaking it down into something they can use. But there's a pattern to it, a rhythm almost like. An alarm blared through the facility, cutting her off. Red emergency lights began flashing as backup systems engage. "They're here." Elena's voice was tight with tension. "Multiple Nix ships just appeared in the Atacama sector. Get your data and get out, Doctor. We can't lose you or your research." Sarah was already moving, initiating emergency protocols on her computers. "Elena, listen. The crystals, they're not just technology, they're alive. The energy absorption, it follows biological patterns. They're not machines, they're organisms that evolved to feed on energy itself." The lights in her lab flickered as the first energy drain began. Above ground, Sarah knew, the Nix ships would be descending like crystalline angels of death, their beautiful forms belying their lethal nature. "That's fascinating, Doctor," Elena replied, "but how does it help us kill them?" Sarah grabbed her emergency drive and the sealed container holding the crystal fragment. "Every living thing has a metabolism, Commander, even energy-eating crystals. And like any metabolism, the lights died completely, leaving her in darkness broken only by emergency chemical lights. It can be overloaded." She made it to the emergency elevator just as the backup generators failed. The lift, powered by good old-fashioned counterweights, began its ascent to the surface bunker. "Remember how you overloaded that first ship at Europa? That wasn't just a lucky shot. Their biology has limits, specific frequencies and amplitudes they can't process fast enough. Dr. Chen, whatever you're going to say it fast. We're losing installations across South America. We've been fighting them wrong," Sarah explained as the elevator rose. "We've been trying to defend our energy sources, but we should be weaponizing them instead. Imagine hitting them with multiple forms of energy simultaneously. Thermal, kinetic, electromagnetic, all modulated at frequencies their crystalline structures can't handle efficiently." She reached the surface bunker just as the ground began to shake. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the Nix ships, dozens of them, their crystalline forms turning the desert sky into a kaleidoscope of deadly light. "Send this data to all remaining research stations," Sarah commanded, plugging her drive into the bunker's quantum-encrypted transmitter. "And get me to the ITER fusion facility in France. If I'm right, we can turn their greatest strength into a fatal weakness." The next 48 hours were a blur of evacuation ships, emergency broadcasts, and desperate planning sessions. While the Nix methodically harvested their way across South America, humanity's greatest minds worked frantically to implement Sarah's discovery. The theory was elegant in its simplicity. The Nix had evolved to absorb and process energy in specific ways, just as Earth organisms had evolved to process certain types of matter. Force them to absorb too many different types of energy at once, at frequencies that disrupted their crystalline matrix's natural resonance, and their biological processes would break down. "It's like forcing someone to eat and drink and breathe all at once," Sarah explained to the Emergency War Council. "Their systems can't handle that kind of simultaneous input. We just need to find the right combination of energies and deliver enough of them fast enough that they can't adapt." The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had been fighting a defensive war, trying to shield their energy sources from the Nix's insatiable hunger. Now, for the first time, they had the blueprint for an offensive strategy. General Zhang, the highest-ranking military officer to survive the Mars attack, was the first to speak. "How much power are we talking about, Doctor?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "All of it. Every fusion reactor, every antimatter facility, every zero-point energy tap we've got. We need to hit them with everything at once, or it won't be enough to overwhelm their adaptive capabilities. That would leave Earth defenseless. Someone protested. If it fails, we're dead anyway. Commander Santos cut in. She had been patched in from what remained of the European Command Center. The Nix won't stop until they've consumed every joule of energy in our solar system. At least this way, we go down fighting. The vote was unanimous. Operation Overload would commence in 72 hours, barely enough time to synchronize all of Earth's remaining power systems and modify them to produce the specific energy frequencies Sarah had identified. As Sarah worked with the ITER team to reconfigure the massive fusion reactor, she couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Nix had called humanity wasteful and inefficient in their energy use. They were about to prove just how right that assessment had been, and how dangerous it could be to underestimate a species that had turned its weaknesses into strengths. The war wasn't over. In fact, the real fighting was just beginning. But for the first time since the crystalline ships had appeared over Europa, humanity had more than just hope, they had a plan. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was turning scientific theories into weapons of war. Sarah looked up at the night sky, where the crystalline fleet's glow was visible even through the clouds. "You evolved to feed on energy," she whispered. "We evolved to adapt. Let's see which trait proves stronger." Breaking point. The ITER facility's massive fusion core pulsed with barely contained power, its magnetic containment field straining against forces that could vaporize mountains. Dr. Sarah Chen watched the readings climb beyond any safe operating parameters, her hand steady on the controls despite the risk. Around her, technicians worked with grim determination, knowing they were literally betting the planet on her theory. "All global power stations report ready." Commander Santos's voice came through the quantum-encrypted channel. She was coordinating the worldwide effort from a bunker deep beneath the Alps. "Antimatter facilities are primed. 0-point generators at maximum capacity. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Sarah checked the chronometer. T-3 minutes to synchronize activation. The Nix fleet hung in low Earth orbit, their crystalline ships forming a lattice of light that dimmed the sun itself. They had been steadily draining energy from the planet for the past week, seemingly content to take their time now that they had Earth surrounded. "They still think we're just prey," Sarah muttered, making final adjustments to the energy frequency modulators. "They haven't realized we're leading them into a trap." The facility shuddered as another wave of energy drain passed through the region. The Nix were becoming more efficient, learning to extract power from increasingly diverse sources. But that very adaptability would be their undoing, if Sarah's calculations were correct. T-60 seconds, Elena announced. "All stations, final confirmation." The responses came in rapid succession. "North American power grid standing by. European Union Energy Network ready. Asian Fusion Collective prepared. African Solar Array primed. South American Hydroelectric Systems go. Antarctic Antimatter Facility armed." Sarah took a deep breath. ITER facility ready. Beginning final sequence. On screens around the world, the countdown ticked away. Every remaining human watched or listened, knowing these moments might be their species' last stand. They had hidden their preparations behind a facade of desperation, making their power stations appear vulnerable while actually preparing them for this synchronized assault. 10 seconds. Elena's voice was steady. "Remember, everyone, no matter what happens next, this is humanity's finest hour. We go down fighting, or we don't go down at all." The countdown reached 0. "Execute Operation Overload," Sarah commanded, and slammed her hand down on the activation control. The world lit up. Every power station on Earth fired simultaneously, releasing not just their energy, but specifically modulated frequencies designed to disrupt Nix crystal matrices. Fusion reactors burst their containment, antimatter pods detonated in controlled explosions, and 0-point generators tore holes in the fabric of space itself. The effect on the Nix fleet was immediate and catastrophic. The crystalline ships, eagerly absorbing what they thought was simply a massive energy release, found themselves trying to process dozens of contradictory frequencies simultaneously. Their biological systems, evolved to handle energy in specific ways, began to overload. "It's working," Sarah shouted over the roar of the ITER reactor going critical. "Their absorption patterns are breaking down." Through the facility's reinforced windows, she could see the sky turning into a cascade of fracturing light. Nick's ships were breaking apart, their crystalline forms unable to maintain cohesion under the assault of conflicting energies. Those that tried to flee found themselves caught in the web of overlapping power fields, unable to escape the very energy they had evolved to consume. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Power stations worldwide were burning out, cities going dark, as they gave up every joule of energy they possessed. The ITER facility's walls were beginning to melt, the heat of its uncontrolled reaction overwhelming even its advanced cooling systems. "All stations, report status." Elena's voice crackled through increasing interference. "North American grid collapsed. European network failing. Asian collective at critical shutdown. African array offline. South American systems destroyed. Antarctic facility static." Sarah watched her monitors as, one by one, Earth's power systems burned themselves out. But the readings from orbit showed the plan was working. The Nix fleet was being torn apart by energies they couldn't process fast enough. "Commander," she called out, having to shout over the sound of the facility's warning sirens. "The Nix ships, they're trying to communicate." Through the quantum channel came a sound unlike anything human ears had ever heard, the crystalline equivalent of screaming. The Nix, for the first time in their species' history, were experiencing something they had only ever inflicted on others, the agony of energy overwhelming their systems. "This is Nexus Path 79. The alien leader's voice was distorted, breaking apart like their ships. "Cease this attack. We offer terms." Belena's response was cold as space itself. "The same terms you offered Mars. The same mercy you showed to billions of our people. Here are humanity's terms. Leave our solar system. Never return. Or we'll show you just how much energy we can waste." The ITER facility's primary containment finally failed, bathing the reinforced command center in radiation that would have killed any unprotected humans. But Sarah and her team were safely ensconced in their shielded control room, watching as their desperate gamble paid off. Above them, the Nix fleet was in full retreat. The surviving ships, their crystalline forms cracked and dulled, were fleeing at maximum speed, leaving behind a debris field of broken crystal that would orbit Earth for centuries to come. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the planet, humans emerged from shelters to find a world largely without power, but also without the threat that had nearly eliminated their species. The price of victory had been steep. Nearly every major power station destroyed, global infrastructure in ruins, and years of rebuilding ahead. But they had won. Humanity had faced down the galaxy's apex predators and shown them that sometimes being wasteful, inefficient, and unpredictable were survival traits in themselves. In the darkness of the powered-down ITER facility, Sarah finally allowed herself to smile. "Commander," she transmitted through the backup communication system, "I think we just proved something the Nix never understood." "What's that, Doctor?" "Sometimes the most efficient solution isn't the best one. Sometimes you have to be willing to break everything, including yourself, to win." As emergency teams began the enormous task of restoring power to a darkened world, humanity had learned something about itself. They were no longer just another species in a dangerous galaxy. They were the species that had beaten the unbeatable, that had turned their own weaknesses into weapons. They were humanity, and they had just served notice to the galaxy. Underestimate them at your peril. The human factor. 1 year after Operation Overload, the rebuilt United Nations Hall in Geneva hummed with an energy unlike anything in human history. Representatives from 17 different alien species had gathered, not to offer terms of surrender or peace to humanity, but to seek their protection and guidance. Commander Elena Santos, now Earth's chief of interstellar security, stood at the podium overlooking the assembled delegates. The alien representatives ranged from gaseous beings contained in specialized environmental suits to silicon-based life forms that clicked and whirred as they moved. All of them had one thing in common. They had lived in fear of the Nix until humanity had done the impossible. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. Elena began, her voice carrying to all corners of the hall through universal translators. For millennia, the Nix enforced their vision of efficiency through fear and predation. They saw the universe as a zero-sum game, where energy must be hoarded and controlled. We proved them wrong, not through superior technology or greater strength, but through our willingness to risk everything in defense of our right to exist. In the front row, Dr. Sarah Chen sat next to the representative from Proxima Centauri's aquatic civilization. The alien's tentacles rippled, and what she had learned was a sign of agreement. The Proximans had been fighting a losing battle against Nix incursions for centuries before humanity's victory had forced the crystal beings into retreat. But our victory came at a terrible cost, Elena continued. Earth's power infrastructure was devastated. Billions live in regions still struggling to restore basic services. Yet even in our darkest hour, we discovered something remarkable. Our perceived weaknesses were actually our greatest strengths. The hall's holographic displays activated, showing images from the war. Nix ships shattering under the assault of deliberately wasteful energy expenditure. Human scientists working to understand and exploit the crystalline being's biological limitations. The final battle that had turned Earth's entire power grid into a weapon. The Nix failed to understand a fundamental truth about humanity. Elena's voice grew passionate. We don't just consume energy. We transform it. We take raw power and turn it into art, music, literature, dreams. They saw this as inefficiency. We saw it as what makes life worth living. A murmur ran through the alien delegates. Many of their species had similar experiences with the Nix, who had dismissed their cultural achievements as wasteful and unnecessary. Humanity's defiance had given them hope that there was another way. Sarah stood up, taking her place beside Elena at the podium. In the past year, we've made remarkable discoveries by studying the Nix crystal fragments left in orbit. Their biology tells a story of evolution taken to an extreme. The pursuit of perfect efficiency at the cost of everything else. They became living machines, seeing the universe only in terms of energy to be consumed. She gestured to the alien delegates, but look around this room. Every species here represents a different path of evolution, a different way of experiencing and interpreting the universe. The Proximans create underwater symphonies that would be impossible in air. The Centaurians build living architecture that grows and changes with the seasons. The Vega Collective communicates through patterns of bioluminescence that tell entire epic poems in a single flash. This diversity, Elena took over, this wonderful inefficiency of life expressing itself in countless ways. This is what the Nix sought to eliminate. And this is what humanity pledges to protect. The declaration was met with a wave of alien expressions of approval, flashing lights, resonant hums, chemical signatures that filled the air with strange but not unpleasant scents. Humanity had done more than just defeat a powerful enemy. They had shown that there was strength in being different, in being wasteful, in choosing expression over efficiency. But the gathering was more than just a celebration. In the months since the Nix retreat, other threats had emerged in the power vacuum they left behind. Several species, inspired by humanity's victory, had begun developing their own energy-based weapons. The galaxy was changing, and Earth needed to help guide that change. We proposed the formation of an interstellar council, Elena announced, not based on military might or technological advancement, but on the principle that every species has something unique to contribute. The Nix tried to impose uniformity. We choose to celebrate diversity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been enemies for generations found common ground in their support of the human initiative. The very qualities that the Nix had despised, creativity, adaptability, unpredictability, were becoming the foundation of a new galactic order. After the session, Sarah found Alina standing by one of the hall's vast windows, looking out at the rebuilt Geneva skyline. The city, like much of Earth, still showed scars from the war, but new construction rose alongside the old, a blend of human architecture and alien engineering that symbolized the changing times. "Did you ever think," Sarah asked, "when we were fighting for survival in that bunker, that we'd end up here, teaching other species the value of being inefficient?" Alina smiled. "Maybe that's the real lesson of all this. The Nix thought they were the pinnacle of evolution because they had eliminated everything they saw as wasteful. But life itself is gloriously wasteful. Billions of species trying billions of different ways to exist, most of them failing, but some finding incredible new possibilities. And now humanity gets to help guide that wonderful waste of energy and resources." Sarah chuckled. "I still can't believe they're calling us the species that broke the crystal crown. Makes us sound like characters in some epic space opera." "We are characters in an epic," Alina replied, watching as a Proximan ship created patterns of light in the sky, their species' traditional gesture of respect. "We're just lucky enough to be writing it ourselves now." As night fell over Geneva, representatives of 18 species, humanity included, began the work of building something unprecedented. A galactic civilization based not on power or efficiency, but on the simple idea that every voice deserved to be heard, every culture had value. And sometimes the most beautiful things in the universe were the ones that served no practical purpose at all. The human factor, it seemed, was exactly what the galaxy had been waiting for. Legacy of stars. 5 years after the formation of the Interstellar Council, a new structure orbited Earth, a massive space station that combined architectural styles from 24 species. At its heart was a chamber unlike any other in known space, the Hall of Voices, where representatives from across the galaxy gathered to share not just diplomatic concerns, but art, music, and stories. Today, that hall held its breath as it witnessed something unprecedented. A Nix ambassador was about to address the council. The crystalline being was smaller than its war-era predecessors, its form more organic and less rigidly geometric. This new generation of Nix had evolved, or chosen to evolve, away from the strict efficiency that had driven their species to become galactic predators. Commander Alina Santos, now approaching retirement age, but still carrying herself with military precision, sat beside Dr. Sarah Chen in the human delegation section. They watched as the Nix representative floated to the center of the hall, its inner lights pulsing in patterns that seemed almost hesitant. "I am Harmony Path 35, the Nix began, its translated voice softer than the harsh tones humans remembered from the war. "I come before this council not as a conqueror or predator, but as a student. My species has spent the past 5 years in isolation, reconsidering everything we thought we knew about the nature of existence." The hall remained silent, dozens of species waiting to hear what their former tormentors had learned. "We thought we had reached the pinnacle of evolution," the Nix continued. "We had eliminated all waste, all inefficiency, reducing ourselves to pure energy consumption and processing. We saw the universe as nothing but a resource to be harvested. And then, humanity showed us how wrong we were." Sarah leaned forward slightly. This was the first time any Nix had publicly acknowledged the impact of their defeat. The crystalline being's inner lights shifted to a pattern she had never seen before, something almost like humility. "When humans overloaded our absorption matrices, they did more than defeat us militarily. They forced us to experience something we had forgotten: change, pain, growth. The very inefficiencies we had sought to eliminate turned out to be essential to evolution itself." The ambassador's form rippled, and suddenly the hall was filled with a beautiful display of light and color, not the harsh, predatory glow of old Nix ships, but something more like an aurora borealis. Several species gasped or made their equivalent expressions of wonder. "This is art," Harmony Path 35 explained. "Something my species had dismissed as wasteful for millennia. Yet in creating it, I have discovered that the energy spent serves a purpose beyond mere efficiency. It creates connections, sparks emotions, generates new thoughts and possibilities." Elena smiled, remembering a conversation from years ago about the wasteful glory of life itself. The Nix had finally understood what humanity had been trying to tell them all along. "We request permission to rejoin galactic society," the ambassador continued. "Not as rulers or predators, but as equals. We offer our knowledge of energy manipulation not as a weapon, but as a tool for creation. And we offer our deepest apologies to all species we harmed in our blind pursuit of efficiency." The hall erupted in discussion, each species communicating in their own unique way. Light signals flashed, chemical markers filled the air, subsonic rumbles shook the floor, and 1,000 other forms of communication blended together in a celebration of diversity that would have been unthinkable in the old Nix-dominated galaxy. Elena stood, using her position as council president to bring order to the chaos. "Ambassador Harmony Path 35, your words are historic, but actions must follow words. What guarantees can you offer that your species has truly changed?" The Nix's response was unexpected. It began to sing. Not in words, but in pure energy, creating harmonics that resonated with the crystalline structure of its own body. The song spoke of loss and discovery, of the pain of transformation, and the joy of creating something new. It was beautiful, profound, and completely, gloriously inefficient. When the song ended, Sarah was the first to speak. "5 years ago, we defeated the Nix by overloading their systems with energy they couldn't process. Today, they overload our senses with beauty we can barely process. I think that's all the guarantee we need." The vote to accept the Nix application for council membership was unanimous. As celebrations broke out across the hall, Elena found herself standing next to the Nix ambassador. "Your species taught us something vital," Harmony Path 35 said quietly. "The universe tends toward entropy, yes, but life, true life, fights that tendency not by hoarding energy, but by transforming it into something more. Something beautiful." Elena nodded. "That's what makes the galaxy worth fighting for. Not the resources we can take from it, but the wonders we can create within it." The celebration lasted for days, with each species contributing their own forms of art and expression. The Nix joined in, their crystalline forms creating displays of light and energy that brought tears to eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, across the station. In her private quarters later, Elena recorded what would be her final log as council president. 5 years ago, humanity proved that being wasteful, inefficient, and unpredictable could be strengths rather than weaknesses. Today, we proved something even more important: that change is possible, that evolution never truly stops, and that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in defeating an enemy, but in helping them become something new. She looked out at Earth below, its night side now glittering with restored power grids and new cities that combine technology from a dozen worlds. Humanity had not just survived their trial by fire. They had emerged as leaders of a new galactic age, not through dominance or efficiency, but through their very human ability to imagine something better and risk everything to achieve it. The legacy of their victory wasn't the destruction of an enemy, but the creation of a future where every species, even former predators, could find their own way to add beauty to the universe. It was inefficient, chaotic, and gloriously alive. Exactly the way it should be.